That morning, soft sunlight filtered through the trees outside the Maple Haven nursing home, where the silver-haired residents were enjoying their morning tea. No one could have guessed that in just a few hours, that layer of peace would be stripped away. Officer Liam Walker and K9 Dog Bruno, an elite German shepherd, came to perform a routine security demonstration, helping the elderly relax and feel safer. Residents laughed as Bruno sat at attention, raising his paws in salute. It seemed like just another day. But as the group passed the eastern corridor, which had long been unused, Bruno suddenly stopped. His ears pricked up, his eyes tense. Then suddenly he growled and rushed towards an old door, awakening a secret that had been dormant for 10 years. Bruno growled fiercely, claws scratching at the rotten wood of the door. At the end of the east corridor, an unmarked door that had been neglected for years. Officer Liam tugged on the leash, but the dog didn't budge, his whole body tense, his eyes fixed on the crack between the two doors. A nurse ran in her face, pale. That room has been sealed for a long time, she stammered. It used to be a storage room, then locked for safety reasons. Liam frowned. Who locked it, and why is there a deadlock on the outside? No one answered. There was only Bruno's labored breathing and the constant warning roar. An old man standing in the distance said, trembling, "I've dreamed about that room. Many nights." The air turned cold. Liam pulled out his radio. Backup requested. "We have an unusual situation in the east corridor." Bruno let out a short hiss and continued scratching, as if to say that there was something beyond that door waiting to be exposed. The pliers clicked and the lock fell to the stone floor. The door slowly opened, making a chilling screech. A cloud of dust rose, making everyone cough and cover their faces. Liam shined his flashlight inside. The light swept through the dusty room as if time had stopped. Inside, rusted wheelchairs were piled, haphazardly broken crutches and cracked plastic chamber pots were strewn about. All were covered in so much dust that their original shapes were indistinguishable. But what sent a chill down Liam's spine was in the corner of the room, a large ash-gray tarp neatly folded with a small plastic bag beside it, partially buried under the debris. The bag was covered in long, dry, dark brown stains. Bruno let out a sharp hiss and turned to the back wall. He began to claw at the rotten wood, each hard swipe causing the paint to peel off. Liam moved closer and tapped lightly with his hand. The echo was hollow. "This place isn't special," he said softly. One of the policemen carried a crowbar. They began to pry at the planks, and behind them, a dark opening was revealed. Another room, a door in the room, and a secret no one has ever known. The narrow door behind the wall opened, revealing a wound that had been hidden for too long. Liam stepped in, first flashlight in hand, heart pounding in his chest. Bruno followed him, hissing lowly ears, pricked eyes, alert. The room had no windows, no air vents, and was so quiet that you could hear every breath. The smell of dampness mixed with rust and something else, hard to name but haunting. The flashlight scanned every corner, a small iron bed with rusted ropes. The walls were scratched, scribbled in white chalk and fingernails. On the shelves were children's toys, eyeless dolls, plastic cars with broken wheels, rotten stuffed animals. All covered in dust, but still neatly arranged as if left there intentionally, not by time. Bruno stopped suddenly, leaning over to the old safe in the corner. Liam went to open it. Inside was a drawer filled with old VHS tapes, many of them hand-labeled with names and dates. A sheet of paper lay on top, scrawled with the words, "For the confidential only." Liam clenched the paper, his heart tightening. This was no longer a story about a forgotten room. This was evidence of something terrible, something systematic. A place that had once held people, possibly children. Bruno growled this time at the floor. The tiles there seemed different. Liam knelt down, tapped empty. A gap in the floor. Another secret waiting to be unearthed. And this time, nothing can stop the truth from rising from the darkness. Liam knelt down, gently prying apart each loose tile. With each lift, the air felt thick. When the gap was just right, he and Bruno looked into the void below, a shallow pit covered in dust and cobwebs, but in the center was a rag of old cloth. And what was inside made Liam catch his breath. A small, very small skeleton wrapped in a tattered baby blanket. On its wrist was still a faded plastic bracelet with a name the letters almost faded Laya. Liam fell silent, tears welling up without warning. He needed no further proof. He knew this was a living thing, a little girl abandoned, forgotten, and perhaps the victim of something more brutal than anything he had ever witnessed. Bruno buried his head in Liam's shoulder, as if understanding the unspoken pain. The room was cold but stifling with guilt and haunting, as if the memories of this place still lingered in the air. Memories that the living have tried to bury, but the dead still scream to be remembered. Liam stood shakily holding the tiny name tag like a 1,000-pound token. This was no longer a mission. This was a promise that she would never be forgotten again, that no more children would have to suffer this fate in silence. He looked at Bruno. The loyal dog's eyes lit up with sympathy. A cruel memory has just been turned over, and it is also the beginning of justice beginning to speak. The next morning, the sky was as gray as the heavy mood of the investigation team. In the makeshift office of the forensics center, Liam flipped through the documents he had found in the secret room, old records, patient lists, and torn sheets of paper covered with children's names, along with the scrawled words, "status discharged." But there was no record of them leaving the hospital. No address, no relatives to pick them up. Just names that quietly disappeared. A file left Liam stunned. Laya Thompson, age 6, temporary resident following a family accident. No medical history, no discharge record. Just a red-stamped note, processed. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Agent Rivera entered, his face stony, but his eyes burning. "We've checked the missing persons files against this list. There are at least 7 matches, and none of them have ever been confirmed to have left the institution." Liam clutched the file. Beneath the dusty pages was a desperate call from the past children who had existed, who had smiled, who had cried, and then been hidden from collective memory. Bruno lay still beside him, ears pricked up as if listening for something humans had long forgotten, an unanswered cry for help. It was a misty morning, and Rivera and Liam stood before a dilapidated wooden cabin nestled on a lake. There was no house number, no sign of habitation, but they knew this was where Harold Callahan, the former nursing home director, had been hiding for more than a decade. The door was unlocked. Callahan sat motionless in the old armchair, his eyes hollow as dark pits. When Rivera entered, he didn't resist, didn't argue, just looked up at Bruno. The K9 dog hissing softly, his fur bristling and his eyes glowing. "You knew this day would come," Rivera said coldly. Callahan nodded, his old hands shaking. "I hear their voices every night." The confession was not forced. He had been awake with the past for too long, and it was Bruno who brought it to light. Not Rivera, not the police. The dog who refused to turn when the truth was hidden behind the wall. Callahan was handcuffed as sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the once-forgotten room. The first light in years awakened by someone who could not speak, but always listened. A month after the incident, the Ridgeway nursing home grounds were sealed off. But outside the main gate, townspeople gathered in the golden afternoon light for a quiet ceremony, not to celebrate, but to remember. On a simple wooden platform, Bruno stood next to Liam, his fur neatly groomed, his gaze steady. No flags, no fireworks, just a small medal that little Lila, victim Laya Thompson's niece, treasuredly placed around the K9's neck. "Thank you for not ignoring the screams no one else heard," she said, her voice trembling. The applause was quiet, but heartfelt. Tears streamed down many faces, those who had lost, and now had some measure of justice restored. Bruno didn't bark, he didn't roar. He just stood there, calm, brave, like a silent gatekeeper, between the border of light and dark.